everyone, Adam here, So Was Your Podcast. I have another interview for you today. I got to sit down with writer-director Wes Miller to talk about his newest movie, A Day to Die. This was a really cool interview, very inspiring. I know I say that kind of stuff a lot, but I love talking to these creative people forging their own path. A lot of them relatively new in their careers, as Wes is, but the talent's there, the passion's there, so it doesn't really matter how long he's been doing it. He's doing it right. A Day to Die is an action crime thriller. It's got a great cast, a great action pedigree. Bruce Willis, Frank Grillo, blanking on other names, and I apologize. Kevin Dillon. And for being a lower budget movie, no, not for being a lower budget movie, A Day to Die is a really cool action movie with huge sequences filled with practical effects and really well edited and put together. It never looks like Wes is shooting around things. It never looks like the budget is holding back the action. I mean, cars are blowing up in the streets, squibs are going off, there's a full arsenal of machine guns, handguns, all sorts of armaments. It just looks great. It's also this kind of cool heist thing where once you think the core of it's done, there's this extra wrinkle that the movie has to explore. And Wes does get into that in the interview where he doesn't just want to do cool action on a screen. Obviously, that's a great thing to do in an action movie, and he does it, but Wes is really happy to go into these scripts, and he says kind of give them one more polish to add some depth to it, so you actually care about these characters, actually a history of them. And I see what he means. Listen to the interview, you're going to hear him say it. I don't need to rehash the whole thing. But when you watch the movie after hearing what he's saying, you really see what he means on that extra wrinkle and on getting just that little bit more of care and human side to the story, because that really elevated A Day to Die from being a standard action thriller you find on a streamer to being an action thriller with a bit more heart and a bit more depth and a bit more engaging because of it. I was really happy to talk to this guy. I'm really excited to see what he has to do in the future. Enjoy the interview. Hey everyone, Adam here, So Was Your Podcast. I'm sitting down with Wes Miller to talk about his career and his newest movie, A Day to Die. How you doing, Wes?
Hey, I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, once again, thanks for coming on. I know we just kind of did that. Before we get to A Day to Die, and we definitely will because it looks pretty awesome, I wanted to talk about your creative journey and how you got there, because you were doing something totally different before. So when did the movie bug kind of bite?
So I've always had it, man, ever since I was a little kid, making the home movies with my little Pixel 2000, this audio recorder that record video. Um, but, wound up taking the law journey, like, being an attorney. And even then, I'd always pick up a camcorder anytime it would say 24 FPS because you'd be like, oh man, maybe I could make something that looks like a movie. And it would never look like it. So, just, always on the periphery. And even in law school, man, or when I had my practice, my whole law office was was decorated with movie posters, legal movie posters. So it's always been like right there on the edge, on the periphery. And then about 2011ish, 12ish, like as the DSLR started, becoming popular, I got me a T3i, and I was like, wow, like I could shoot something that looks like a movie. And that's kind of when it started biting. Then started realizing like to really do this, it's really about like being able to tell a story, writing scripts or being able to find scripts. And then just kind of dibbled and dabbled with a couple of shorts, man. And I was just like, all right. And then here's what really did me. This is where I was like, okay, I think I'm really gonna do this. My first screenplay got picked up by a producer in Los Angeles who's now an Emmy winning director. And he brought me out, let me come on set, got to see the whole process, working with the actors, see him casting, shooting, the editing, all the pressures that come along with it. And while I was out there, one of the producers on the project, was like, hey, we really enjoyed your script. I used to represent Tony Gilroy, and your writing really reminds me of his work. And like, that was somebody who I was studying, like one of the few people I was like, oh, wow, like that was a real big compliment. So, about 2015, man, I was just like, I don't want to make 100 shorts. I want to learn how to tell features. And so I got a little, I had a little talent, and then with that compliment, from that producer, I was just like, hey, look, man, we live once. And you got to go all in if you really want to do it. You just got to dedicate yourself to it because it's a craft. And I just sold my practice, man, and went all in, and I mean, haven't heavily looked back since, but been diving forward.
That's crazy because when I read that you were not just practicing law, but civil law, which I imagine is even more like in the weeds. Um,
Mm.
and now you just mentioned you had your own practice. So you were really all in, and it sounds like doing pretty well.
Yeah, I was actually a pretty good attorney, man. Like, when I told my mom about the switch, she was like, "You want to what? You want to
Yeah.
stop to do what?" And it is scary, man, when you stop doing something that you actually pretty good at, and your identity is kind of wrapped up into, yeah, I'm a lawyer, and then you go into this whole nother world where you're just basically at the bottom of the totem pole and your identity is just like eviscerated, and you're having to find yourself again and find your identity. It was emotionally challenging. So but I just think, like, anytime you leave something, for something you don't, it will be that way. And yeah, I did like trial work, had my own practice, man. And I still love the law, but I think when I went into the law, I was a little bit more idealistic. The thought that I could, quote unquote, change the world from a practice, and you do make a dent of a difference. But there's nothing like film, man, and like the arts. Like, it's just always been like a first love, and I just, we don't study the great lawyers of the past too often, but we study the great playwrights, and people who were told stories, and people who were able to move people and touch hearts, man. And it's just such a rewarding field to be in.
That's a really cool way to kind of put the two worlds into one almost, or like compare and contrast. Where yeah, you do reach audiences with film, and you can still say something.
Yeah, yeah. And and that's kind of what I do like it. And I like making action movies, and hopefully being able to put a little bit of myself into it as well. So yeah, it's definitely a cool journey.
And it's cool that it's working out. It doesn't
Yeah,
hurt,
man.
right?
It's funny because I mean, probably maybe like a year and a half ago. So from like 2015 to say 2019, where you're like really searching for an identity, and then I was finally able to say, with a sense of, no, I hate to use the word pride, but it is somewhat of that, with a sense of pride, that I'm a filmmaker. Like, I can say that now without hesitating. But for a long time, it was kind of like, yeah, I'm a filmmaker. Yeah, and so just finding yourself in that new career, once you do it, it definitely is rewarding.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm sure the 4 years where you were hesitant to say what it was you were doing was not didn't feel so awesome at the time, but
Yeah, you're just
you
kind
have
of
to take that
emotionally
journey.
lost. It's kind of like you're walking in the desert, and you see the goal, you know where you can get, where you are in your craft. And I've never been one to be disillusioned. I hate when people say, look at me," and their work really isn't ready for people to say, "Look at me."
Hmm.
And I think I probably skew too far the other way. It's like, don't look at me yet. Don't look at me yet. And I'm sure there's a happy medium there, but like I've always just been focused on the craft, like get better, get better. Um, and so yeah, man, that's kind of that little 4 year loss period is just like, just keeping the blinders on and staying focused. And every film that I've done, I've always like, all right, let me work on this piece of filmmaking, let me work on this aspect of filmmaking, let me work on this aspect of filmmaking. And I think with the day to die, I've been able to like bring a lot of that together, which still a lot of lessons learned going into the next one.
Yeah. So that 4 year period, was that also kind of your film school? Because you went to law school, but you probably did
Mhm.
an undergrad in directing.
No, you're right. And that's kind of what, I kind of looked at it, with my friends and family. It was kind of like, look, in order for I really use the law as like the analogy. It's just like, it took 4 years of undergrad, 3 years of law school, plus about 3 years to actually get your feet wet in the legal field before you really, and that's an aggressive. I think it's still a good 5 years when you're practicing law to really know what you're doing. That's like 10 years. So like, to come into a brand new field, no matter when you come into it, and expect to, without any schooling, to just jump in and like be at the top of your game is not very realistic. And so I always like to keep myself with realistic goals. And for me, it was like, all right, 5 to 7, just continue to try to make a living, as you build up the ladder. And yeah, and the good thing about film school is you can make a lot of those mistakes, in that 4 to 5, 6 years when you do like a film school or in a grad program. You can make a lot of mistakes without people watching. People aren't expecting, to make any money off your work or your product. But when you do it like in the quote real world, um, it's laid bare for everybody to see. So all your mistakes will be seen, and that's okay. I just think, and I do a lot of studying, man. I look at like the John Fords, the Howard Hughes, man. Those guys used to work, like shoot a movie like once every other week, and like they didn't just start off to be the best; they worked to be the best. And so, yeah, some people get really lucky and get a really good producer, or have like spend 5 to 7 years working on their perfect script, and they're able to break through. But I think for the majority of us, it's really a grind and just understanding like you're doing it because you love it. It's going to be hard, but continue to do it and it'll pay off.
Yeah, that's really good advice for anyone listening who's trying to do, I think, anything creative. Is like it is going to be a grind, and you kind of have to embrace that part of it.
Have to, man. It's not it's not for the weak at heart, man.
Right, you got to want
Yeah, you
it.
do. You do. You have to want it, man. Serious.
Did you find getting into film and finding your film identity was harder than law school or being a lawyer, or was it around the same difficulty, just in totally different ways?
I think I tell people all the time that making a film is actually harder than being a lawyer. Now, I think the stakes are higher in being a lawyer a lot of times, in a sense of like if you lose a case, somebody's life is going to be affected. If you're a criminal attorney, somebody's going to jail. If you're a civil attorney, somebody who's relying on that either settlement or lawsuit to make them whole is going to not no longer be whole. So that stress and that level of responsibility is a lot heavier. But with film, there's still also a responsibility in the sense of like you have people believing in you and trusting you, in the sense of like you got actors trusting in you, you got crew trusting in you, you got financiers and trusting in you. And at the end of the day, you have to be able to deliver on all those fronts and be prepared, emotionally and as well as skillfully to meet those demands. So it's a little different, but it's harder. Like there's so many pieces of the puzzle that have to come together for a film to get made, that it's just mind-boggling, like sometimes like how films are actually able to get done, especially from just conceit to release. It is just it's like it's like definitely going uphill battle with boulders coming at you. Like every time you take a step, another boulder, you dodge that one, another boulder, you dodge that one, then you finally make it up, and you're like, oh man, now we got to shoot. So
All right, now we're
so now
starting.
yeah, so now it's another uphill. Now we got to edit and release it and market it. So it's another uphill. Um, but I got to sit like with an audience with this thing, couple of them, and it was the first time I've been able to do that in my career. Not the first time. It's a excuse me. It's the first time I sat with them, a audience, pretty confident in the material and in the film itself, and I wasn't like, "Oh, gosh, man, I didn't feel like all my mistakes were just going to be like screaming at me through the screen. So
Right.
it was such a rewarding experience. It makes all those boulders that I've dodged like definitely worth it.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
So for your the writing side of things, you said you kind of got your foot in the door selling a script, and then you got to go to the
Mhm.
set and kind of see how it was all done behind the scenes, which is awesome. I'm guessing that wasn't the first script you wrote.
No, it was the first script I wrote.
Oh
It
wow, it
was the first,
was.
yeah, it was the first feature script I wrote. Um, it was
That's
called Beyond
impressive.
Justice. Oh, appreciate it, man. Yeah, it was, man. You know how they say, luck is preparation meets opportunity.
Yeah.
Literally, like I put it on a website called Scriptly, Simply Scripts, and there are like tons and tons of scripts on there. I called it Beyond Justice. It began with a B, so that means it was closer up, but that wasn't purposeful. It was just justice. I was a former lawyer, so I was like, let
Right.
me write like some kind of legal thriller, some kind of legal thriller. My guy Tim Woodward found it. hit me up. I thought it was a scam, and then I was like, he was like, "No, I'm legit, man." Like, and he was new as well, so it wasn't like I got it into the hands of like Cassian Elways or something like that. But he was new. I was new, and so it was just what I needed because I didn't know anything about like on set decorum or anything. So it was just what I needed. Kind of like my first year of film school is what I would consider that as. It's like here's your introduction, your one-on-one classes, and this stuff is real in the field, man. So you got to be ready when you go. So that's how it happened.
For sure, that's awesome. Especially that your first script like that blows my mind because I always hear I've read who knows how many books and listen to podcasts and interviews and blogs and everyone says like just write because your early stuff's not going to be your good stuff.
And that's true. Like I look back at it, it's okay. Like there was a lot of things I would do differently now, than I
Well,
did
sure,
then.
and you're going to say that about this one 3 years from now and
Yeah,
about that one 3 years from then.
yeah. But if I was afraid to put it out, then I might not be sitting right here with you right now. You know what I mean?
Right?
So
Yeah, yeah. If you just buried it in a drawer, then
yeah, just let people see it, and don't. Everybody says no in this industry, so it's just kind of like don't let those no's stop you. Just shake them off and keep going, and just you have to be objective and really say, all right, is my craft growing? Are my skills growing? And if they are, then you keep growing. You just keep going.
very cool. And you're still because I saw you've written some, you've directed some, and you've written and directed some.
Yeah.
Do you have a preferred like you want to write scripts more than direct, you want to direct more than write, or you want to write directly? Do you have a preferential, or is it just kind of whatever the story needs?
Yeah, I think my preference is to write and direct. It's just I enjoy writing. Creating the worlds is a really it's tough, but it's really amazing to see it come to life. And then that's the truest way to stick towards your vision of a story. But I've been asked to like read other scripts to like direct, and I would do that too as long as the story's good and I feel like I can connect with the material and I can just do a polished pass to kind of make it feel as mine. Then I'd do that. But yeah, man, and I think so. I'm a Gemini, and so like I think writing directing like really helps my like is suited for my personality. There are times when I don't feel like being bothered and I can just sit alone and write, you know what I mean? And like
Yeah.
by the time I'm tired of being alone, oh, we can go direct, I can go be social. And then in the editing, so I can be social with just one or two people, you know what I mean? So it keeps
Yeah.
that cycle.
Get a little bit of everything.
Yeah, a little bit of everything. So I enjoy all pieces of it.
That's awesome. So how did A Day to Die come across your desk?
Yeah, a friend of mine, Gianna Capaldi, who's actually in the film, brought it to me early. And I was just kind of at that point asking myself, all right, what kind of filmmaker do you want to be? What is it that you want to do? And then I was just like, all right, well, we got to take specific steps to do that and be that. So he said he brought it to me, and I read it, and it was cool, straight actioner, and I was like, all right, well, here's the challenge for me on this one. Let's work to make a straight actioner a little bit deeper. Like, what depth? Where can we add depth with characters? Where can we infuse your sense of the view of the world and make it feel like Wes Miller? And let's see how big of action we can execute on a limited budget. Those are kind of like my three, and let's make sure we can have strong actors and strong actors, meaning like strong performances
Mhm.
in the film. And those were kind of like my goals, man. And so when I was like, okay, all right, I'll do it. Let's do it. So I went in and did a quick rewrite, got it ready, and I met Frank Grillo on my last film, Hell on the Border. Great guy. So I sent it to him first. He was like, I'm down if you're down. I'm like, all right, let's do it. And then as we were getting ready to get ready for it, um, COVID hit. So we just kind of had to table everything, and then we picked it back up, and then that's when we went up and started finishing the casting process.
Very cool. So you had already had a working relationship with Frank Grillo, so he was your first sign on.
Yeah, correct.
That
Correct.
probably helps a lot because he's a big name in action. So it probably helps when you're going after your supporting cast and stuff. Be like, well, look, we got a big name. Let's do this thing.
Yeah, it does. It helps with that. It helps with the financing. It lets the financiers know that we have a real project. The challenge we had though was, the just with Frank, the financing wasn't going to, I wanted to be able to execute the action. I knew it was going to be a limited budget, but I needed some budget to do it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I needed, I knew it. I had an idea of how to do it and make it feel big at a certain number. And we needed, another, more cash to make that happen. It's just the world we live in. And then, we got blessed enough through a couple of relationships with a friend of mine, Alex, who actually plays Steve in the film, introduced me to Bruce and his team, and had a great meeting with them, and that went well, and then he came on next.
very cool.
Yeah.
How does a meeting like that go? You're relatively earlier in your career, and
Yeah.
you probably grew up watching Bruce Willis movies. Like it's a
Oh yeah,
legend in the.
100%.
So how does that kind of meeting go? Like, is it just all business, or is there a little bit of like, hey, I just got to get this out of the way. You're awesome, or
It's a little bit of both, man. It's kind of it's kind of like a meet and greet, and that's pretty much the best way to describe it. And so you do try not to fanboy out
right,
because you gotta be a leader.
right,
But you do sit there and be like, man, this is like Bruce Willis, I'm talking to. So you do that, and then I met with his manager and stuff, and they were like on board. Um, yeah, and it was good, man. Otherwise he wouldn't have been in the film. Like there's just I know he's done quite a few movies in the past couple of years, but and you'll notice like they're either with the same set of producers or directors often.
right. He's
Um,
got his
you know,
team.
yeah, and so like I was kind of a newbie, so um, yeah, they had to like me and trust me, and I hope I made them proud.
So that initial meet and greet kind of meeting is he's already has somebody already seen the script, or is it just literally like, let's see if our personalities match, then we can talk business.
No, they read the script first because if
Okay,
the script doesn't work, there's no use in
there's
talking
no
to them.
point, right?
Yeah,
That makes sense.
yeah, and so I think if I had to take a read on it, the meet and greet is really about: Are you a jerk? Can you get this done? Are you going to be able to at least somewhat get the script executed? And will we enjoy our time working with you? Um, and I think that's huge, and I think most actors and their team, those are questions that are super relevant, no matter who the talent is.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah,
This, from what I've seen, this is the most action you've done in a movie. Is that correct?
yeah, it is. It's my biggest film to date,
Yeah.
without question.
So how did you wrap your head around making it look so big and expensive with your relatively modest budget, and how did you kind of stretch that and up the ante?
So it was funny because like I had a amazing stunt team, amazing armorer, amazing special effects team, and like during prep, which that's key. It's like to be able to pull anything off like this is prepare, prepare, prepare. But often my armorer or my special effects, supervisor will be like, "So Wes, how many explosions you want here? As many as we can afford. All right, how many guns do you want? As many as we can afford. How big do we want it? As big as we can safely." And I was like, guys, listen, whatever question you're going to ask me, my answer is going to be some derivative of that. So you already know what my answer is going to be. They're like, okay, boss, we got it. So that was kind of it. The mentality was, let's make it as big as we can within the budget that we have, and within the safe parameters. And then, so it was really for me after that, just studying a lot of action films and just realizing that, um, outside of the let's say Michael Bay is really big, with the explosions and things. Outside of like big masters where you see it boom, 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 a lot of it is like within a frame and explosion, within a frame and explosion, and helping it build. So my thought was, how do I go in and make each frame feel big, which collectively together would string together something that feels big. And so we wound up shooting with three cameras, the Z-Cam E2F6s. They're 6K cameras, which, now if I'm doing three cameras at 6K, and I'm doing 3 takes, that's 9 different angles, plus I can punch in and move around. So now all of a sudden I've gotten, you know, 5 times the coverage that I would have if I only had 1 or 2 cameras at 4K or 2K. And so that was it. It was like picking your tools, the cameras, um, making sure that, when you frame up, the city looks great and like we can just fill the frame, and making sure that we were prepared for every scene and that our technical team, um, were able to like really push us to the limits with the resources that we had.
That's really cool. The thing you mentioned about using a 6K camera, so you have the is it more depth? I'm probably not using the right terminology, but you can frame a shot differently because you have that zoom capability. I never even would have considered that. That's awesome.
Yeah, and they're full frame cameras, which also helps the film feel a little bigger. They also have a Super 35 frame, and we really compared the two cameras with like how close up looks with the full frame and how close up looks with just a regular Super 35. And there's a reason why a lot of these larger films are going to the Alexa LFs and the 65s. Um, it just adds a layer of, like you said, depth, but it, of cinematic. It adds a cinematic quality to the frame that just you may not be able to articulate it, but just slightly different than a Super 35. Super 35 is fine, but it's just like the full frame, and especially when you're masking, things that you're unable to like do, and so like these Z cameras, Z excuse me, Z cams, like um, dollar for dollar to me are like the best cameras on the market right now. A full frame 6K camera, and then yeah, you basically can recrop, punch in, push in, like and gives you whole new angles. So like they were invaluable tools to be able to pull this off.
That's awesome. So you probably had a pretty good idea of what you wanted to get on the set. I mean, you would have to with
Mhm.
all those moving pieces and all the money on the screen and stuff
Yeah.
like that. But did it how drastically did it change once you got to the editing room? Because you said you also edit.
You know, not terribly, because we had a great editor, Julie Garces. Like she was amazing. And so what she was able to do in her initial cut, she made sure that she tried to use every single camera angle that we shot. So she gave me a lot more in the edit, or let it be as full as possible, and allowed us to trim down and trim down and trim down. And a lot of times on these productions, you don't really have enough material to even stretch it out to like a 90-minute narrative. So now you're having to go in and find and do that. Thankfully we didn't have that problem, and that was because of the way I decided to shoot it. And then having an editor with the patience to go through all that material, and the eye to actually like her cut was like her first cut was just like on point. It's like, okay, she understood what we were doing and what we were going for. And yeah, and then after that, man, it was really just sitting in. And now because we're not like having to scratch the surface and look for stuff to fill out a timeline, we're able to really like condense down and like really shape it around the story.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I just the because you watch action and it's almost as an audience member, not quite throwaway, but you just kind of watch it and it just you absorb it and that's it. But
Yeah.
to shoot it, it just seems like one of the most complicated things you could be doing in a movie.
Oh, it is, man. I love it. It's hard. It's exhilarating. Um, but yeah, man. So basically I had like a shot list, and you're moving so fast. I basically would either try to get 2 or 3 shots off my shot list in one setup, or make sure I have my shot that's in my shot list and have the other 2 cameras picking off other shots. And then like I just check it off and keep going, check it off and keep going. Always, and that's more in the action stuff. In the dramatic stuff, it's a little bit different. I was able to go a little bit slower. But
Mhm.
like when you're having to like get all these gunshots and movements and reactions. And man, like if you sit there and think about it, you're going to waste hours. So you do all the thinking before the clock is on. Trust your shot list and just start checking off. Get the shots, get the shots. All right, it's all done. And sometimes I'd be there like, man, we got it all. Like, yeah, we got it all. All right, let's move on. So
Yeah. That's really cool. It's got to be a great feeling too.
yeah, it is, man. It
I'm
is.
sure they're intimidating scenes to walk into.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And you also just kind of mentioned the dramatic side. You get to slow down a little bit, but earlier you had mentioned that you wanted to do, you called it a polish pass on the script, so you could
Mhm.
kind of give it a little bit more depth.
Correct.
So I don't want you to give story spoilers. Obviously, people should go and watch the movie to get
Yeah.
the story. But what do you draw on to get that depth? Is it the characters as they already exist, or is it kind of an idea you already had that fits?
Yeah, it's a good question. I feel like it's really about the characters and whatever's in the piece and where is it lending? Like what is this so with this one it's like, all right, what is it really trying to say? Like what is it? Because no matter what work you do, no matter how successful it is or unsuccessful it is, every film is trying to say something, even if it's just like, hey, we just want to shoot up some stuff. That's saying something. But like for me, I feel like film almost is like the church of the 21st century, where people at least traditionally could congregate, and watch something and give themselves to it and absorb whatever messages may be in there. So I look at the script and be like, all right, what is this trying to say? All right, I get what it's trying to say. Why isn't it coming across? And what can we do to make it come across? And then what are the characters here that can help that? And also, what are these characters saying? What are these characters going through? Is there something that this character can be experiencing that would also communicate what this film is really trying to say? And so for me, like I created the Tyrone Pettis character who's played marvelously by Leon. He was one of the characters I created and a few of the subplots. Just because I kind of felt like the metaphor of the whole piece, it ended up being more like, we're all from these different segments of the world and society, and things that you think are good aren't necessarily, and people who seem to be bad aren't necessarily. And that, sometimes us as a society have to put all of the differences, no matter how strong they are, aside for a common, goal or a common good or to defeat a common evil. And so when that was manifest, it just kind of led itself to um, led me to be able to kind of maneuver some of the plot points to get us there.
Very cool. Yeah, that's I always love talking to a director or a writer director um about getting into that level of it because everyone's going to have their own takeaway and it's
Yeah,
probably close to what you were going for. You put it all in the movie.
yeah,
But I just love getting it right from the source because then you can match it up and when you go back and rewatch, you can see, oh yeah, okay, this is setting up that because it's not, never at the end of the movie is the character going to come out and really this was all about, and, and if you do, you're doing something wrong.
I was talking to a friend this morning, and there are a subset of movies, and I don't want to call out the genre, but where they basically are hitting you over the head with the message and like just doing blatant stuff that you're like no man, like that, no, just don't do that.
Yeah.
And look man, at the end of the day, like we go to movies to be entertained. And entertainment and learning something isn't necessarily mutually exclusive. So and then it's feeling. We go to feel. We want to be moved, in some shape, form, or fashion. So what really moves us are emotions. Like, and so if it's something that makes you emotional, then that means there's something happening, something transformative on the screen that's happening. And that really only happens when you're dealing with, I hate to say messages per se, but real, issues that decisions have to be made and can, help you learn a little bit.
Yeah, I'm right there on the same page with you. I'm all for a movie having a message, but you have to be an entertaining movie first.
Yeah. And I want to be doing this for a long time, man. And so like if I can't entertain, I can have all the messages up I want, but nobody's gonna watch it. So it's like, it's like, yeah, okay, I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's the business side of show business, right?
100%. And it's real because there's no show without the business.
Right. Yeah. That's awesome. Well,
Yeah.
it sounds like you're doing great. It sounds like you're learning fast because you haven't been in for all that long, relatively.
Yeah.
So that's exciting. And I'm guessing you have more stuff in the works right now, or are you kind of just focusing on the marketing of this one?
No, man. A long time ago, I don't even want to say a long time ago, man. A couple of years ago, I learned a little bit about Antoine Fuqua's process. He's somebody I look up to. And and even Clint Eastwood. I worked with his editor Joel Cox on my Western for a little bit, and learn from both of them in the sense of like, look, you don't wait till your film is done before you start looking for your other work. Otherwise, it's never going to come. You start early and have multiple projects in different stages because of the nature of this film business. If something can go wrong, it will, and you just don't want to be stuck for 2 years without working because you only get better with working. So, look at Clint's filmography. He's doing something every year, every other year, a year and a half or so. So yeah, man, I got stuff in the works. We have a cool little film, 3 Mile Inn, that we're in pre-production on now. It's kind of like a Reservoir Dogs meet Smoking Aces kind of film that I'm really excited about. And then we got a couple others, like if that something happened, but that one's like we're building sets now, so that one's like going.
Yeah,
Um,
nice.
yeah, so yeah, man, I'm just excited, man. I love the journey. I love making films. Um, and just want to keep going.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you taking the time out to talk to me about A Day to Die. That was awesome. I love getting into the creative process, and I like your process. It's a very matter of fact, down to earth. Let's get it done, but also it seems like you're having a good time with it.
Yeah, and I appreciate it. Thanks for having me, man. You guys got a great show over there, man.
Thank you.
Like your show, John Goldsmith's Q&A, film school. Like that was my film school. Just listening to different creators and just taking little nuggets here and there. That's been my film school, man. So keep up the great work.
Awesome. Thank you. If there's anything else you want to plug, A Day to Die is available now on VOD, we should say.
Mhm.
You have socials or anything else you want to point people toward?
Yeah, they can come follow me at I am Wes Miller on Instagram. That's probably my most active social media place. I haven't been great at it, but trying to get better. So yeah, so that's it. Come follow me over there.
Awesome. Well, Wes, once again, I really appreciate it, and best of luck in the future. If you ever want to do it again, hit us up. We'll do it for your next one.
All right, for sure, man. Thank you so much, brother.
Absolutely. Take care.
All right, awesome.
I'd like to thank Wes Miller one more time for coming on the show to talk to me about his newest movie, A Day to Die, which is available now on VOD, and it has a limited theatrical run that appears to be growing. So if you're in a major city, like I know New York, LA, I think some other cities in California, I'm pretty sure Chicago, I think somewhere in Texas, this movie is around, so check your local theater listings or check it out on VOD, and make sure you remember the name Wes Miller, because I think we're going to be seeing a lot from him going forward. Please make sure you like and subscribe. We have a lot more interviews, new movie coverage, Amazon screeners, unboxings, comic reviews, everything you want coming your way. You're not going to want to miss out. Also, make sure you listen to So Wizard Podcast every single week wherever you get your podcasts. SoWizardPodcast.com is your resource for reviews, recommendations, videos, merchandise, and more. We love hearing feedback, so drop some note in the comments, leave us something on social media. All accounts will be found after the show and in the show notes. So Wizard Podcast can also be found on Patreon, where for as little as $1 a month, you get multiple monthly bonus shows. And on a more personal note, a very good friend and I have an ongoing comedy comic series. There's 8 issues available now. 9 is coming any day. We had some delays with the ship or the printer, but tons of stuff you can check out. Couple hundred pages worth of comics already out there. You can find all that and more at socialstudiescomic.com. Thanks.